Boston College football has 21 commitments, but there's still two glaring needs in this class.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Please check out my work over there. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, folks, I have a trio of big recruiting discussions today. We're going to kick it off with football. It's our bread and butter here at Locked On BC. But I also got a big, Earl Grant lands a major commitment in the class of 2025. I'll explain who that is. And baseball has landed a game-changing local recruit. And I'm going to explain who that is and why it's such a big deal for the Eagles. That's all on today's show. Now, let's kick it off with football. Last week, we saw Josiah Victor, defensive tackle from Grayson, Georgia, commit to BC. Second defensive tackle for the Eagles, and fifth commitment out of the state of Georgia. Big get for the Eagles. They're at now 21 commitments, and there's two still silent commitments, so they're up to 23. As I said before, they're not capping it at 25 anymore, so they could still keep going from there. There's clearly this is clearly getting to be a very good class. You get a lot of guys that they've been, targeting since day one. If you look at the big boards that I've been putting up, you know that these are not just names that they're just, drawing out of a hat and recruiting. These are names that they've identified and targeted and landed since they took over in March. Now, that being said, it's not a perfect class. There's still some glaring areas of need heading into the month of July, and let's look at some of the things that they clearly still need to work on. Now, the first big area has to be the offensive line. Now, Matt Applebaum, since he's been taken over, he did a nice job with that offensive line last year. He came back after Dave DeGuglielmo was kind of straddled with a terrible situation where, all those guys graduated. He had all these backups that he could only throw in. Applebaum comes back in, does a nice job. That being said, the results on the recruiting trail has been kind of hit or miss. Most of the times you want to get 3 or 4 offensive linemen in every class. That's usually like the par for the course. But last year they had 2. Year before, they only had a couple too. This year they're at 2. So offensive line is still an area where, I went into this offseason being told that they're looking at 4 or 5. Now, they've missed on a number of major recruits they were looking at. Chris Vigna, who I thought was going to end up at BC. This is a kid from Berkeley Catholic in New Jersey. He goes on his first road trip to Rutgers and commits on the spot. That was something I didn't see coming. There's a couple other guys, obviously Hardy Watts from Massachusetts. He goes to Wisconsin. There's a few other guys that, ended up picking other schools. The big board is basically gone. There's one recruit left that is still on their big board for next year, and that's Kual out of Ohio. The way I'm thinking about this offensive line is I still think they need 2. Kual would be a great get, but Michigan State's kind of lurking around, and Purdue wants him. So the odds are, it's not like BC's a favorite here. I know he had a great visit to Boston College. He came to BC in June, but Michigan State, was lurking and they offered. So this is gonna be a tough get for them if they can get him. What do they do if they don't get Kual? Well, then they got to start, rebuilding their big board. They got to get some new names on there, guys that they can bring in the fall to take official visits during the football games and things like that. This is a tougher situation for them. Kual would be a great get because he's also very talented. He'd give you the tackle that you needed. But you get 3 offensive tackles, then you get a late bloomer, and you have your 4. That's fine, right? So the hope is that they can land this kid, because then your class is basically kind of falling into place on the offensive line. And when you look back at it, if you get those three, so it's him, Denzel Williams from Stepanak Academy in New York, and Robert Smith also of Ohio, you have a class of offensive linemen that are doing what you need to do. You got some depth, you got different positional variability with offensive tackles and guards, and you've got numbers, but you need this class is going to be very important for them. So Kowal is going to be a big one. Now, I talked to him a couple weeks ago. He said he's going to make a decision in July or August. I'm guessing he's probably going to take a visit to Michigan State before he makes his decision. He didn't say that to me, but there's a space at the end of July where he could do that. So that's going to be the name, Kowal. It's Kuol. That's his name. The other position that we're looking at that is still a position of concern is the edge rushers. Now, BC landed one edge rusher in this class right now. That is Israel Oladapopo of Noblesville, Indiana. Excuse me. They had a bunch of guys they were looking at. They had Nathan Nyandararo of Ontario. They had another guy, Quante Gillians of New York. They've had a bunch of guys that they looked at, and they just have not been able to close on them. There's one left right now on their big board. It's Cameron Brown. I talked to him, talked to the staff. They're both still looking at each other. So you land him, I would feel like that would be good. So you land Kowal, you land Cameron Brown. Your positional needs are basically addressed. You got what you need. Now, if you miss on Brown, you got to go back to the drawing board and try to get somebody else, get another name in here. And I've heard some buzz about some players that are recruited and committed elsewhere. But I'm not going to get into it because the staff does not like me talking about guys that are committed elsewhere. They'll give me information and I share what I can with you guys. But I know from previous experience, Shaker Razik is a big one. I don't talk about it if there's a guy that's they're considering. So you can look it up. You can probably find out who this is because it's out there, but I'm not going to bring him up. But there's a committed guy elsewhere that they could be looking at too. Those are the two major needs, both of the lines. And honestly, that's a big need, right? Like the trenches are so important when you're building your football team that you need to get the right depth and the right talent on both sides of the ball. And if that's the needs that you have, that's still a big problem. So hopefully the staff can figure that out and get those. The end is in sight and the needs are there. Now there's two other smaller things that they could obviously get if they need to. I know they're looking at a second tight end, and I had Stevie Amar as the title picture of today's episode. I heard I think BC's in very good shape with him. He could be someone. They could also go for a second tight end with DJ Johnson out of Holy Cross, Louisiana. Those two guys would go along with Bryce Lewis, who's already committed. That's Tim Lewis, the defensive coordinator's son. Then it's, talent as you see it. We just saw John Denman, a running back from Palestine, Texas, commit to TCU. I didn't think BC. I was impressed with BC got him on campus. Then I saw the list. I was like, he's not going to get here. But they'll go for guys that they're impressed with their talent. So that could be Christian Neptune, a wide receiver I think he's from Florida. He's still out there. He has not committed anywhere, and he was at BC. He's quiet. I don't know. And then Landon Hammond, a defensive back from Mississippi, I believe, who has a whole bunch of SEC offers, but was at BC and took an official visit. He's a quiet dude, so I don't know what's going on there. So you get those two big needs, and then you get a kind of smattering. As I said before, the class is going to go over 25. I think BC will have that. And then from here, it's holding on to the guys that you got. And so that'll be the next big piece. Now, in a moment, I'm going to switch up gears here and talk about basketball because Earl Grant landed one of his biggest commitments as a head coach at BC. I'll explain who that is and why you should be getting excited about him in just a moment. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace at Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. We're heading into the All-Star break, but who's the hottest team in Major League Baseball right now? It's your Boston Red Sox, who just beat the Yankees for 2 out of 3. I saw Rafael Devers hit 2 home runs. They are the hottest team in the American League since June 15th, and they have won quite a bit. Now, tickets are going to start getting hot going back to Fenway. Now, if you want to get back in and watch those Red Sox play some fun baseball, you need to use Gametime. They have up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports comedy concerts, theater, and other tickets. And you can just do it by downloading the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You can go to a Red Sox game and you'll save yourself $20 doing this. So terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. So download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? I'm sorry for you if you do, because man, that stuff is exhausting. You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't mix analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, let's get into some basketball news here, folks. On Saturday, Boston College basketball landed a class of 2025 commitment from 6'10 Blair Academy power forward / center, Jack Bailey. Jack Bailey is a top 150 recruit. He's a borderline 4-star. He's 6'10", and you can't teach that. Now, he is an exciting player. He had offers from Oklahoma State, Iowa, Butler. There was a few other Power 5 schools that were interested in him, and he chose BC. He was on campus in June for an official visit. And what excites me the most about Jack Bailey is you're getting a guy where you're hearing about what his positives and negatives are or areas of concerns. His strengths is his offense. Now, how many recruits coming to BC that are bigs have had that as their strength? You look at Jaden Hastings. You look at Armani Mighty. You look at all the guys that have come in that are bigs. That's been their biggest weakness, has been offense. Everyone has been like, oh, he's a good rim defender and he can rebound, but we have to see if we can develop his offense. That's not the case with Jack Bailey. This is a big that can stretch the floor. And when I read his scouting reports, the name that pops into my mind over and over again is Quinton Post. And if that's the case, BC just hit a home run on the recruiting trail. He can shoot the three. He can stretch the floor. He can pick and pop. He can do everything that Quinton Post can do. And he can do a lot on your offensive side of the ball. BC was in such dire need of an offensive big man, and they went out and landed an exciting one. Adam Finkelstein of 247 said, this is a kid that is going to get even more interest as the year goes on, but he's locked into BC. Like, there's going to be bigger schools that want him, but Earl Grant identified him and got him. That is an awesome get for BC. Now you have to wait a year. He's a class of 2025 guy, but this was one of the best recruiting lands for Earl Grant since he got at Boston College. You now have a big that can do things for you offensively. The worries with him is defense. Well, guess what? You have Jaden Hastings. You have other guys that can do the big stuff. Kiani Chanda, the guy that they just brought in. He's a little smaller, but he's more a defensive guy. You can teach that. You can, Earl Grant's bread and butter is defense. Being able to be an offensive spark, especially for a big man, is tough to teach. If you either have it or you don't. And Jack Bailey has it. He was on a very, very good New Jersey team, one of the state champions, with a lot of talent around him, and he still stood out. As Adam Finkelstein said, this is a steal for BC. This is a big time get. Now, when you go into next year, it's basketball's so hard because I think when you're building your roster, football, you can kind of, you expect 10% may go into the transfer portal. What just happened to BC basketball was insane. They lost almost everybody, minus like 3 or 4 guys, to the transfer portal. But like if you're planning out now especially now that the COVID year of 2020, which is like a freebie year, is gone, and most guys are starting to move past that. You're starting to think next year you could hopefully start to get a better gauge on what your roster should look like. So you lose next year, Chad Venning, your big man. That's where I think Jack Bailey is going to be a big inclusion here. You probably will lose a guy or two else. So I know BC has specifically looked at guards. I think guard is a position that they're looking at specifically to make sure that they add at. And there's going to be some names. Akir Wahad, who I think his dad played at BC. Or Akbar Wahid, Akbar Wahid from DC. He's a 4-star guard. There's a couple other guards, Caleb Steger, that they've been looking at, and Matthew Abel. These are all names that we'll be watching for because I think they're going to be looking at guards next. This is a busy time for BC basketball, and football is like my like expertise, but I like basketball too, and I usually can get some good info on that. But over at 247, I also have a ton of national guys. Like I said, Adam Finkelstein wrote a whole scouting report. Like, if you want to know about why Jack Bailey could be a difference maker for BC and like a real steal for them, he has a whole scouting report. Now, on 247 right now, it's $1 for the first month if you want to try a monthly rate. Check it out. Like, if you're just like, oh, I want to see what AJ's talking about, but I don't know if I want to spend for a year yet, just try the $1. Just try for a month. If you like it, sign up for the yearly rate. I'm sure we'll have another, promotion soon. But just try it out. Just become a monthly member for the first month. See if you like it. And if you do, stay on for the year. We have a ton of you guys I know that listen to the show that are our VIP members, but I hope that if you're not, you think about signing up now because you either get that first month for $1 or you can get a whole year for 50% off right now. So get over to Eagle Insider, sign up today. If you're a BC fan, it's a can't lose scenario for you. Now, in our final segment, I don't think I've ever talked baseball recruiting on Locked On BC, but BC baseball, Todd Interneto especially, just landed a game-changing recruit, and I'll explain who that is and why this is an even bigger deal than what I just talked about with Jack Bailey, all in just a moment. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and baseball landed I was going to say, Todd Interneto came in with a lot of excitement last year and had a tough team. He had, the pitching staff was not very good last year. They had some tough moments. Still kind of held on. This year, they already landed a couple big names in the transfer portal. Which I think are going to pay dividends. And many of them are pitchers. You're going to see that. But there's a couple. I think they landed an outfielder, and I forget from where. We can talk more about that later. But not even that. The fact that they landed Julio Solier out of Springfield Central. He's a class of 2024. He was originally committed to Vanderbilt, which is like, blue bloods of baseball, and flipped to Boston College. Now, you could say that could happen anywhere. We talk about it with football, right? Like guys get pushed out, right, from their scholarship offers because the other school doesn't want them. But if you put into Google up Julio Solier, every baseball site is crowing about how good this guy is. I was looking at Baseball Data Combine. They have him as their 2023 Baseball Data Combine Player of the Year. I see others having him as, a 4-star, 5-star recruit. He is a major get. Now, I want to read you what Baseball Data Combine said about Solier. Tremendous athleticism and raw strength all across the board. Years of hard work, focus, and dedication go into becoming the type of athlete Solier is. Comps out similar to Major League Baseball infielder Wander Franco. Solier has never had a varsity high school season hitting below 400, competing at some major public high schools as Major League Baseball, Eisen Diaz. He hit, let's see, I was trying to find, he has a 531 on base average at Springfield Central, has hit about 300 for batting average on every travel circuit or high school league that they're aware of. This is big. This is a game changer in terms of what you're getting for a baseball player. Like, you have been trying to get like a guy now that can carry your program, and the fact that he is local is even bigger. Um, I can't express how big this is for Todd Antonato. Like, a national blue chip recruit. This is a blue chip recruit here, folks, that Boston College has landed, that you have coming in. This is happening more and more, I'm noticing, across different sports. Like, obviously, we have women's lacrosse that they get whoever they want. Same thing with hockey. But we're seeing basketball. We just talked about with Jack Bailey. We're talking about it with there's other sports that have hit major recruiting wins. And the fact that baseball's doing it now too is exciting. It's showing that this program, this school is starting to get it. They're getting their foot on the gas to get themselves more nationally recognized. I'm excited now. When you get a guy like this, like Saul here, you're getting a star in the making. Someone who's going to be probably major league draft. Going to get drafted in the major league to a major league team. You add him in with some of the transfer gets that BC gets. This team's going to be fun next year. We'll have it all covered here on Locked On BC as well. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow with more recruiting news. I'll give you guys some updates on Marcus Upton. I know folks have been asking about that. Any other news and items that have come up, we'll get into all of that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.